nine, eight, seven, six, five, four, three, two, one.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yi, and I am a venture fellow and startup advisor here at Newchip. Newchip is a global online accelerator for startup founders to learn and grow. We not only provide educational materials, we also connect you with people. In this panel discussion session, we are going to talk about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, as we usually call AI, has received tremendous attention since 1956. According to data from the National Venture Capital Association, 285 AI-related companies in the US raised $6.9 billion just the first quarter of 2020. So today, let's start the conversation by introducing everyone here. First, we have Ms. June Lee. June, would you like to briefly introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure, thank you. Hi, my name is June Lee. I'm the founder and the general partner of Wisemont Capital. So myself, I have over 20 years in the SaaS and enterprise software business. I manage this global companies, their entire US operations, and I help them grow the business. And since 2015, I started the Wisemont Capital. We focused in the early stage investment, specifically in the AI and SaaS area. We have around 45 portfolio companies today that span around, including some area related to autonomous drive and AI in healthcare and chatbot. So several areas are related to the AI. So really happy to be here today. Would like to share our perspective. And also because we have invested globally, some companies in India, some in London, some in China. So we have this global view to see how the AI technology has been applied to different industry. Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. Next, we have Adam Massey. So Adam, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thank you for having me. So Adam Massey, I'm founder and CEO of F33 AI. We are a modern professional services company that helps everybody from growth startups to large established enterprises in traditional industries with end-to-end data science development, data transformation, really helping them take complex business problems and solve them with data science and machine learning. Prior to F33, I spent 12 years at Google Cloud, where I had a number of different roles, ranging from I was a founding business member on the G Suite team when we launched the enterprise version of that in 2007. I also was a key executive building out the partner ecosystem for Google Cloud Platform. So really pleased to be here and part of the Newchip family.
Thank you, Adam. And finally, we have Preetham Vishwanatha. So Pritham, do you want to talk about yourself and the company you have as well?
Yeah, no, thanks, Yi, and thanks for Newchip to give this opportunity to be on the panel. Really appreciate it. My name is Prithm Bhasinatha, founder, CEO of an AI-assisted music learning platform called Kana.ai. Primarily what we do is provide artificial intelligence tutoring, plugging the gap between being self-taught and having a human teacher actually teach you, which involves giving feedback on rhythm, intonation, articulation, ability to actually compose melody, help you in terms of arpeggios or whatever. While most of the AI is actually focusing on STEM-based education, arts education is actually very archaic, and we believe that there's a large opportunity, especially in the new normal when the world is actually getting into remote, in subliminal art forms, especially like music, requires a lot of innovation, a lot of help. We started about a year back, and we're self-funded, doing extremely well in terms of growth. COVID is a double-edged sword. The new normals actually helped a lot of people stay back and learn music remotely, which has kind of come in as a blessing. prior to this, I've been in the industry doing artificial intelligence and machine learning for almost like 15 years. Was a VP of data science at in Mobi, which is the world's largest mobile ad tech player. After that, I was in Course Hero, which is a music, which is a ed tech company. I was a VP of artificial intelligence there. Been in the industry for 25 years. My strengths are technology, product, and visioning, and that's what I bring to the table.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone. It's very exciting. So let's kick into the topic. So over 6 months ago, COVID-19 pandemic hit the world. Many industries are still suffering from repercussions. Based on your recent experience and conversations, what are some of the impacts and also challenges that AI companies or startups are facing? So we will start with Ms. June. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, very good question. I think the COVID-19 has impacted many businesses, especially in the offline business, right? So, so travel industry, hospitality, and many of the retailing industry has been impacted substantially, right? And in the AI company, it really depends on the stage. So some area actually got benefit from it, some are not so. And one of the biggest problem of the AI companies is that we believe the AI technology will actually impact the industry for 10 years, for decades or even longer. This is a technology we believe will transform and touch them, many industries wide. But however, how it is implemented and impact the industries and heavily kind of entrenched into how related to the business model, related to the business flow. So one of the challenges that AI companies are facing is you find the specific scenario that you can apply the technology into. So it's really not directly related to the pandemic, but it also impacted. So what I mean is if you already find direct business flow, that the technology has helped a lot. Even during the pandemic, you may see the business gain out of it, right? However, if you have challenge to find a specific case, and then that means the customer hasn't really tested and proven your technology is helping them to gain more revenues and that. And during the pandemic, then your customer probably are not going to pay you, right? And this market fit and this testing period probably will last even longer and before the customer are ready to pay for it, right? So as a startups, you really have to prepare for that. But specifically in some area, like healthcare, we have seen the company in the AI industry. For example, there's one portfolio of companies that working in using the AI to help on the cancer discoveries and drug discoveries. So those companies actually gained from the pandemic because people in the telemedicines are kind of booming in that area. People cannot come to the clinic and or chat with their doctor face to face. Those remote technology are helping them. And also, the one thing that we learned from the pandemic is our entire system is not really ready to address this. And I remember when the conversation beginning, in February, we're thinking about this pandemic will go away in 3 months, right? In summertime, and how the business will bounce back and all that. And now we're talking about 1 year, 2 years, right? Or it's like how we deal with this as a new normal, right? And because right now, the drug discovery, the vaccines, and this, because we know, everybody knows the virus is actually changing and mutate, right? And do we have an effective way to address that? So the companies using AI technology to help on the drug discovery to deal with this quickly. And they actually get more support even from the government, to expedite this development, right? And I have multiple areas, and also one of our investments is in autonomous drive, right? So people actually, before the pandemic, people are talking about, we don't know how long this business model will come into place for autonomous drive, because people are now so comfortable at letting go of the drivers, but all of a sudden nobody wants to take Ubers or Lyft because of the worry about the health health risk, and people are really talking about can we get rid of the driver sooner, right? And in different city, for example, in some city in China, it's already coming at the real model. People can order the car without the drivers and test it, and so we probably will see the expedition in those areas as well. So there's always the pros and cons, and yeah, we can discuss more in detail.
Thank you. Yeah, it really depends on the industries in general, I think, like you said. So Adam, I think you advise a lot of companies, especially from different stages. Some of them use AI technology, some of them talk about data science. So what's your take on this topic?
Yeah, I know. I think it's been a really interesting couple months. So I guess, first of all, my high level macro perspective is we definitely saw March, April, May a slowdown overall in terms of the technology investments companies were making. I think they were pausing. Kind of like June was talking about, not sure where, if this was going to be a 2-month thing or a 2-year thing. And so there was some pause there initially. I think we definitely saw softening of what I would call like luxurious AI projects, which are generally the application of machine learning and data science towards things that don't effectively or don't directly impact top line or bottom line. That said, now I think we're seeing an interesting, very pragmatic resurgence because companies are trying to figure out if this is the new normal for a while, and especially if you're in an industry that's been dramatically impacted. We're coming from a period of like incredible economic prosperity where everybody was pretty much doing well, to a time now where there's a lot of people out of work and a lot of different considerations on investment. I am seeing companies really start to prioritize data science as a means to be smarter about how they run their business. So, looking for ways to leverage data science and AI to help drive customer acquisition, price optimization, all those things drive towards how do you retain customers and grow customer base. And then, very similarly, the same application towards managing the bottom line. How can you operate more efficiently, manage costs, spend money more wisely? So those are all applications of AI where I think we're seeing actually a little bit of a thrust right now where companies are trying to figure out how can they be more efficient and operate better. I don't know, but I think overall, it's those things that I think are driving a lot of innovation. And actually what's been interesting is I've been sort of amazed since I've started this business as to how, I guess, immature in a friendly way, many even tech companies are in the data science world. Like, I had made an assumption that a lot of like every SaaS company in the Bay Area had this really large, fully staffed, strong data science team. And a lot of tech companies have kind of what I would call kind of a data science or ML deficit that they've accumulated. In the last couple of years of rapid growth, pound for pound, they've been hiring software engineers, and they've kind of known they needed to make bigger, AI investments, and they've deferred as they've grown the core engineering teams. And now I think a lot of them are trying to figure out how do they catch up. And, for me, this is going to sound like such a consulting thing to say, but that's the business I'm in. It's really the 3 core things. It's like people, process, and technology. And that's where people are trying to now think about how to catch up. People are very hard to find. Really solid senior data scientists are difficult to find. Most people were in the early days, so they're struggling to kind of figure out how do you get the right process for you to efficiently identify where ML models will have impact, develop those models, deploy them, monitor, and revise. Like that process is for most companies, is a brute force effort for a single model. And then you think about how do you scale that to hundreds of models. It's challenging. And then finally, I think part of the piece that we're talking about here in terms of, startup and investments, the technology component is also evolving. Like, I think there's a lot of interesting innovations coming out around helping with the entire sort of ML AI lifecycle that are super exciting. But it looks a lot like, a lot of other software spaces in their early stages of development where you start kind of lower level and over time you move up stack.
Yes, interesting. I also would like to hear from Pritham, because Pritham is also a founder of like an AI company. Maybe from a founder's perspective, do you feel anything different? Also, do you experience any impact or challenges with operations and things like that?
I think June and Adam covered a good amount of information, but what I want to cover, which is probably a different take, is that the new normal has actually put a lot more people on the digital, which means not just the volume of data, but the diversity and the nature and the variance of data has shifted. What we were actually used to in terms of the bias and variance of the previous normal has changed the bias and variance in the new data, which means the models which was working in the past has to be reimagined. The models, the AI models, which had certain supervised properties or unsupervised labeling, now has a diversified set of data which has to be reimagined. The same models will not be able to predict because your time series forecasts are broken. Your propensity models are broken. Your ability to actually manage the demand curve, which has actually shifted because people will not be able to pay the same price, has broken. And I'm severely saying the word broken as against shifted, primarily because with 11 million people, I'm just talking about US, and if you apply this at the global scale, you can imagine the AI recession, if you will, if that's a word that you can coin, that the models are actually facing in terms of the shift in priority, right? So for founders, this is the greatest opportunity because now it has become a leveling field. People who had large data science team, people who had big AI teams have to reimagine the models, which will put them on the same stage as garage day startups. So which means not only do you have access to technologies like GPT-3 or any transfer learning model or short learning models, which has been made so easy today that a product manager can actually go ahead and sign up to one of these online platforms and start running basic regression model which required data science engineers in the past, right, to actually code these models. The product managers can go and shoot it, which means the machine learning engineers, the AI engineers can now move to the next level, creating the innovation, which has leveled the field. That's one encouraging factor for most of the founders who are just starting off. The second aspect is your cash flow analysis forecasts have significantly changed, primarily because once the demand curve changes, your supply curve needs to catch up. Your ability to actually model your OpEx during the crisis events has to change. Your ability to actually think about pricing and subscriptions and payment plans and EMIs, all of this actually has a significant impact in terms of cash flow. And that has an impact in terms of any business, not just offline or online, but literally any hybrid business models as well. These are the areas and these are the opportunities for almost all founders who has access to easy AI and also like mid to difficult AI technologies that's available out there to be embraced and used to solve problems in the existing industry. I'm not even talking about go ahead and innovate, flying to Mars or make quantum computing more commercially viable. I'm not even talking about cutting edge sciences, right? I'm just talking about biopharma. I'm talking about energy and renewables. I'm talking about, I think June already gave some good examples in other industries. And Adam gave examples in terms of SaaS and business enterprises. These are existing industries with cash cow, which is now facing challenges of variance and bias, which has shifted significantly. And founders can actually go ahead and beat large companies who are on the same leveling field. That's my take on it.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yes. Different industry have different take. And also at the same time, I love what you guys said about, because this is such a special time. It's a new norm and people try to adjust. So I think everybody mentioned a little bit about my next topic. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, we think about a lot of buzzwords like machine learning, deep learning, and data science. But what are some new trends, especially with the hit of this new pandemic? Because people are shifting their attention, and we see a lot of different trends and different things we're trying to do to fit into the new module. So maybe we start with June again. Do you see any new trends, like new things, maybe in different industry, but also in AI in general?
Okay. So we believe AI is a fundamental technology that touches the many industry, right? And then we also look at in terms of investment, the framework we put together is actually, we categorize into the 3 layers. So the first layer is probably in the hardware chipset, and the middle layer is the core technology. They are within like some securities and, some of the very, very core technology area. And then on the top, sitting on top that's a kind of application layer, which is probably you're asking which industries that's is going to be used. So for the startups, is really first the question is to ask yourself which area that you are actually have the advantage and you will be working on, right? So if it's like a chipset layers, it's very different from the application layer, right? And when talking about the application layers, probably most startups are keen on. And I think during the pandemic or this year, we realized, first of all, try to be in the business essential, right? So, and this pandemic looks like it's going to impact the business in a year or two. So some of the area like travels, like retails, and probably will take some time to really bounce back. The impact is going to be huge. And if you have connection over there, try to work on some really essential area because we have some companies, for example, they deliver a chatbot, for example, right? So at the beginning of this year, we asked every portfolio of ours to do some business analysis to see how this pandemic will impact them. So at the first, this particular company thinks that their business might get impacted, right? But then later they found out because their business is considered as essential, and actually none of their customers actually dropped. They all continue to pay the subscription. This is a chatbot area. And another one is doing the customer success, right? Because that's really directly related to the top line and bottom line of the business. And their business also seems to be okay, right? And then we also have some company in the fintech area, and those they see kind of the offline retail or hotel and restaurants business actually got impacted quite a bit, right? But on the other hand, they have some customer from the e-commerce, right, online, and those numbers actually grow substantially, So if their customers are serving in that industry, I was trying to say is looking at the remote support, cloud computing, those areas, their business are booming, right? And also some area like Peloton, this is like a in-home exercise. Their customer also grows, right? People actually developed a new kind of way of living and work, right? And if AI is a technology tools actually helps the business to be smarter, understand their customer better, and so you can have a better recommendation. For example, also you can the AI companies improving the workflows, right? And maybe shorten the time, and the business can be running more efficient. I think the question is more applied to which industries and how this new kind of a way of living and work and shoppings, and how this will impact, and how that business model is going to change. And then as an AI company, how do you best revise your strategy to support the customer in those different industries. So I see cloud computing, the online kind of online way of exercise, working, and also consuming the content, entertainment, and shopping. Those are definitely we see that very strong growth in those areas, right? And perhaps make sure that you have a ready solution for the customer to leverage that growth, right? And we also invest quite a few companies in the security area. Security that has several aspects in terms of AI, how to how to monitor the networks, and how to kind of analysis that. Those actually will also see pretty strong growth there, because this is also considered as a business essential, right? So yeah, so if they have a technology to, and I think probably because even hackers have more time at home, so we actually, and people also spend more time online. The network hacking is actually increased substantially. There was a kind of a article saying, the business, more hacking, like growing like 50% more. So I think in that area, probably the great needs will continue, for the next decade, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. And autonomous drive, not just earlier I mentioned autonomous drive. So this not only it is impact about how we take the cars, instead of taking the taxis or Ubers, and maybe in the future the car will be no drivers, and I think the autonomous delivery, those we probably will see. There are several companies are working there. That requires a lot of the AI work. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Very interesting to hear different industries have different different perspectives as well. And next we have Adam here Adam is actually, in my opinion, like a cloud computing expert, and also at the same time advise many companies within the cloud computing and data science area. So Adam, do you see any maybe trends or maybe what I say adjustments to the pandemic?
I think just to build on some of the comments I was making earlier, I'm not, I deal with mostly enterprises, and so the AI that I get exposure to is not science fiction, super sexy. It's usually very pragmatic AI. It's like how companies are trying to figure out how to get better yield from a manufacturing process, how to do near real-time pricing optimization. As retailers are opening up again slowly, they're trying to think about how can they, apply machine intelligence to better schedule their workforce so that they don't over or under provision employees on the retail floors. So, they all kind of follow that kind of pattern where you're trying to, take a diverse set of data signals and predict something, and then ultimately optimize a business process with the end goal of achieving some business outcome, whether that's increased efficiency, reduced cost, better customer acquisition. So just to kind of recap that, right? That's where I'm seeing increased investment. And like I said, also just to kind of build on, I think because that's become more important than ever, I see a rapid awakening to the need to mature these in production. And I make the production distinction specifically because like a lot of companies, bigger companies, have had large laboratories doing experimentation and trying stuff out. And I've been kind of surprised that when I speak to line of business leaders, how disjointed they are from some of those labs. Like even some very large pharmas have like labs of 500 data scientists, but the business isn't, in some cases, many cases, the business actually has a hard time tapping into that talent pool to go develop a production solution of some sort. So I think I think part of the trend I'm seeing is companies having to move very quickly to think about how to mature their processes, their technologies, and do more of these things to leverage machine intelligence and how they operate their business. So for an investor, I think that's just going to spawn even more investment in the broader AI technology landscape. And so there's a whole opportunity space around the life cycle. So much like a developer, we've seen a lot of evolution for developers and things like developer tools and CI/CD. The same problems need to be solved for data scientists. Data scientists, for the most part, are not data engineers. Like they don't build new data pipelines. Now, a lot of them are being forced to figure that out. But the result is you get maybe a good data scientist doing okay data engineering or a great data engineer doing okay data science. More and more, I think that there's going to be a market for technology innovations to increase data, model development throughput, but not just automate model development, really thinking about the whole life cycle of like deployment and measurement and monitoring and revising and feature engineering. So a lot of that stuff hasn't really been broadly, figured out yet or solved by software. And I think it's a really ripe technology space. So yeah, I think that's the big trend I'm seeing is more adoption or interest in adoption of AI, very immature teams and processes and technology landscapes to do that. Therefore, that creates a really nice opportunity space for startups and technology innovations.
Thank you. Yes. So Pritham, as like an entrepreneur perspective, from an entrepreneur's perspective as well, what are some trends that you are seeing?
One of the things that founders don't do is chase the buzzwords. What they do is probably chase the undercurrents. If you look at the overall AI market as predicted for 2025, that's supposed to be like somewhere around $390 to $400 billion, out of which enterprise AI is about $50 billion by 2025. Most of this, remember that from 2016 to almost like 2019, 2020, almost a large portion of the enterprise, as probably Adam already suggested, were either in the pilot phase or not fully operationalized. But 2020 moving forward, 75%, there's going to be a shift in piloting to operationalization, which actually changes the need on the streaming, especially given the COVID, which changes the need in terms of analytics and infrastructure, resources, optimization, and natural language, and any other countermeasures that June already predicted in terms of security and attack threats, right? But what it all means at the end of the day is that if AI is a black box, and if you do not have a mechanism to explain that, then enterprises will not be able to be accountable and responsible from a legal aspect. Because in a pilot phase, a responsible, accountable, fair AI is not necessary. But as soon as you go to operationalizing all of this, while all else is being true and all else being said, which is, you need to have better hardware, faster machines, and, you need feature engineering, blah, 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 which is like a table stake, the most important aspect that will become, both challenging and current and present danger is something called responsible AI. And responsible AI by itself in the next 3 to 4 years is predicted to be somewhere between $5 to $10 billion industry. And if you, as a implementer of AI, either an enterprise or a startup or an autonomous car or cybersecurity or a facial recognition or natural language, is not constantly thinking about ethical AI, fairness of use, bias, diversity, then you're going to get hit really badly, both by the Congress and by the law. So one thing that I would urge most of the people to think about while they're thinking about bioprinting and water tech, nanotech, renewable energy, is things that was not obvious when you were in the pilot stage. As soon as you move it to operationalizing it in large scale, will come back and hit you harder. So I think one of the trends that, all else being equal, one of the trends that you have to really track is explainability and responsibility and fairness.
Thank you that's very good comment. So I think this relates to our next topic as well. Pritham talked about legal side of it, and then June talked about also the privacy, maybe the security side of the machine learning technology and also AI technology. So back in 2018, Elon Musk attended South by Southwest in Austin and made a shocking comment. He was saying, "Mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes." This made people concerned about the future outlook for AI. I have my personal experience as well. I co-founded a facial recognition software company back in 2016. And then when we did the events using facial recognition to check in people, and we have a good amount of people saying, "Oh my God, what is this? I feel scared." It's the public concern and also people's fear without any education about the technology, and they start to think about my privacy. And also the legal people, and there's 3 states right now in the United States do have privacy law. Europe lay out GDPR, and a lot of things going on. So what are your thoughts on this? So we start with June.
Definitely, that's more and more growing concern, right? And one thing is for the enterprise, I totally agree with what Preetham said. If a company, when it's grow bigger, it definitely needs to have that data privacy and proper practice in place to first to protect the customer data, and second of all, to protect yourself as a company, because in the past 5 years, we have seen so many data leak, and the company who actually counter those leaks, bear the legal liability, the huge liability, right? The hundreds of millions dollars liability. And as a matter of fact, there's actually growing kind of a security insurance in that to help to deal with. But still, this is a kind of a battle, and I think it's very important for the company to have the chief security officer in place and to make sure that the data are protected. And another challenge is that each country, their requirements are very different, right? And I think the GDPR is actually a good example. The rule is actually published and clear and constantly improving. And then when the requirements is clear, and then the companies they can align their strategies. But however, in the U.S., in a way, people are realizing the problem, but the requirements are not so clear, right? And it's gradually we're putting in place. And Google, Facebook, and putting in place a more kind of similar to what GDPR has required, basically, and the rules are kind of gradually shaping in place. So that's actually how, make this problem more difficult. And also because of now we've been facing more geopolitical challenge regarding against the anti-globalization, and then that's even make these things even more difficult, right? Because we don't know in the future, does it mean, all the country, if you are a global company, right, and you have customers are constantly moving and in different countries, and what is the best way to design your data center? What's the best way to monitor your traffic, across the different data center, and also provide a backup, right? Because not only you need to guard your data, you also have to make sure, if one place have a physical disaster, you still have other servers to be able to back up the data, right? So the challenge, I agree with you, the challenge is definitely there. The good practice is we make sure the problem, people are sharing the information, and we need to discuss this, right? From academic through the industry commercialization, we need to constantly, discuss the proper way, to leverage the technology and the proper way to treat people's private data, right? And then, all the startup founders need to take this seriously and implement that. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And also for Adam, which from maybe an enterprise's perspective and a lot of big clients you have, some companies, for example, may want to have more data. Some companies may say, but their clients or the people they're using the tool maybe are against it. So maybe what are some thoughts on this topic?
My vision, unfortunately, probably won't rival Elon's. He's got a pretty good distance of vision. But I think in the enterprise space, a lot of the concepts that both Preetham and June have talked about, I think are extremely relevant. So explainability is a big one, right? In financial services, if you have an algorithm decide that someone shouldn't get a loan because of various things, like what were the actual criteria that fed into that decision, as an example. So that's one example. The ethical side, I think, is another. I don't know. One of the trends I'm starting to see more of is, to your point, exactly what you said, Yi. It's like companies want to build models that leverage data sets that not always are good data sets from a data protection standpoint, or the customers maybe opt out of data sharing. And so there's an interesting effort going on right now to figure out how to build effective models on anonymized data sets. It's hard to do, and a lot of times the models aren't nearly as effective, but that's a really interesting direction to go into, because it solves some tricky problems for companies who do want to take massive data sets and drive optimization or prediction from it. But some of those data sets have PII or various different protected data attributes inside of it. So that's one. But I think at the end of the day, I agree with you guys. Like if you just look at like the last 5 or 10 years, it's like, it scares me a little to think about how fast technology is going to evolve in the next 10 or next 20 years. So sure, there's reason for concern, but I think the same concern also stirs up really good things like setting up the right kind of standards, thinking through data protection globally, and more and more, I think we have to really put a lot of pressure, especially on the biggest technology companies, to ensure that they're talking and sharing some of those standards and thinking through data protection, ethics, explainability, and all those things. Because like at some point, in the not too distant future, you get to the point where we are delegating what seems like incremental decisions to machines, but based on massive amounts of data, they could be really big, and the implications of those decisions could be far-reaching. And so I think that's what Elon was getting at. And the technology-wise, that's going to happen very, very quickly. So I think it's up to us as stewards of our various industries and technologies to ensure that we are also bringing the human element to it and thinking through ethics and standards and agreeing on the right ways to handle and process data.
Perfect. Thank you. And Preetham, as an entrepreneur as well, and you mentioned for the second topic, talking about a little bit about how to deal with the legal and also pay attention. There's a trend to also pay more attention to the legal side of the thing. So what's your take on this one?
I have 2 points of view. One is a point of view which is largely misquoted based on whatever Elon or Gates or Hawking has actually mentioned. I think they were talking about AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is way ahead in the future, or maybe tomorrow, we don't know, because that's how the exponential technology works. Just before you hit the wall, you think you're actually striding on an asymptote, and the wall hits you. And that's what they are talking about, saying you're not prepared. When that experiment happens, you're really not prepared. And no amount of conversations about data privacy or GDPRs or legality or ethics is going to solve that if you don't think about a kill switch. And I think it's really hard to develop a kill switch when a large portion of the economy is actually dependent, as Adam said, day to day on an incremental basis. If what you call as a 1% increment accumulates, if you do that over like 10 years, right? That's not a 1% increment anymore. That's a CAGR that really grows. So from a legal perspective, I think the existing constitutional amendments does not protect not just Americans, but globally in terms of either understanding the impact of if an AGI event happens, if an artificial general intelligence really happens, what does it look like, right? Even without talking about AGI, I think some of the challenges that June and Adam already spoke about in terms of AI being a great leveler, being available in the hands of both the governments, the public, as well as the private sector, and the dark web, right, which happens to be the fourth estate or the fifth estate, as you call it, is really a tool not just of deterrence, but also a tool which is based on will and motivation of the user. And the more self-willed you are, the faster the impact you can achieve in terms of making a good or bad decision with AI. So that's where the ethical conversation comes in. This has nothing to do with explainability. This has nothing to do with fairness of use. Ethics as humans I mean, we haven't figured out ethics either from Plato or, from time immemorial. And we are now custodians of actually building and codifying that ethic and building a Rosetta Stone, and we don't understand it. So that aspect is probably not in our control. And because it's not in our control, I don't think entrepreneurs should actually lose public are fearful, but education, I believe gluten or probably misinformation or denial is far more devastating than nukes rather than AI, to be honest. I mean, if you look at all the things that kill humanity, it's probably fast food, right? Nothing kills faster than fast food. So I think more than being, fearful of AI, be mindful of it, constantly think about ethical practices, constantly think about everything that June and Adam actually said, both bottom-up, top-down, hybrid, and out-of-the-box thinking. We don't know what we don't know, and hence it's hard to be fearful of it. but go with the flow. I think we are in good hands. I mean, yeah, we need to be fearful, but we are in good hands.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. It has been really a lot of information and also very helpful. So I would like to thank you very much for your participation today. It is our pleasure to have you join us. Your input and expertise are definitely useful and valuable for all the startups and investors we have in the program. And I would like to conclude. This is the end of our session. And thank you very much. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.